Who starts the ball rolling?
Sir, we are passing through a very critical phase of human history when everything seems to be degenerating, particularly in a country like India. You feel it very starkly. And things are so serious that one begins to wonder if we are witness to the death of a culture. Outward forms of culture will live for some time on a receding momentum. New temples may be built and new pujas may be made, but actually the soul is already languishing, disappearing. It's a very grave crisis. One main feature of this crisis is that it is not restricted to India, but each one of us is looking at it sectorally, in terms of our own problems. And the crisis has much wider dimensions. We were wondering if we could explore with you if there is a way to approach this fact, the fact of degeneration in various directions, and discover a point of regeneration.
Professors. So you're asking, what is the root of this degeneration, not only in this country, but various other countries also? What is the basis, the source of this general human disintegration? Is that the question, sir?
Yes, sir. Sir, it was very fortunate that for people like me, my generation was able to harness itself to some system or another. And then we hope that working for that system, we shall automatically arrive at a point of regeneration. Now all that has let us down very badly. And I think every system has lost its credibility. Not only that, but people who are earnest and who are capable of deeper thinking know that through systems we are not going to find a solution to this problem of humanity. The systems as such are a factor of humanity.
So I'm not the oracle only, there are all the professors and all the oracles.
There is no cancelling the fact that there is degeneration in every walk of life, in every aspect of society. But society, as we know, is a human relationship in a extended state. So ultimately, as we see things, society, if it is left to itself, only degenerates. So what is the factor in the very making of society that leads to degeneration, or it is something else you would like to say?
I should like to ask the relevance of culture.
I am not the chairman, so we're all the chairman.
The relevance of culture, if a culture like an Indian culture, is a very ancient culture, could in some way respond to this challenge. Or
Sir,
should the individual completely cut himself from the culture, the land, the tradition, and seek the solution or the truth for oneself? I wanted to know what relation the culture has to this problem.
Sir, I am one of the listeners. May I say one thing here?
No. I'm afraid if we all join in, we can all join in, but it's generally restricted. Would that be all right, sirs? What do you say?
Yes.
Huh? Do we ask the observers to join in? So,
Only we because we can't stop anyone. Just
there will be a discussion, I believe, next
first week of January.
first week of January. Then you can bombard me with a lot of questions.
Are you saying a culture like Indian culture? Obviously, you see all signs of degeneration, crisis in character, crisis. There is a disappearance of ethical values, whether it is business ethics, political ethics, or religious ethics. Is there a capacity in a degenerating culture to renew itself? Has it got elements in it which can correct itself? And where do you find these elements? Is that the question? Or as he put it, or as you put it, you walk away from this culture, you can't do anything with this. And if that is so, then where is the source of renewing this culture?
So, could we define not too definitely the meaning of that word culture?
I think that would be better.
What's that?
I think it's something to cultivate, something
That means to grow, to cultivate, to expand, to explode, to create, to
I mean, there are-
bring forth something original. All that's implied in that word culture.
Sir, when I ask this question relevantly to this inquiry, I feel that during the last 50 years, there has been a telescoping of regional cultures so that regional cultures are losing their identity, and all the developments that are happening in the world, man going to the moon, atom bomb, pollution, everything, all this is creating a loss of identity for each separative culture. So that separative culture, the day of separative cultures is over, and there is man and his culture. So that labels as Indian culture, as American culture, as the American way of life, the Russian communist style, everything has lost its credibility in terms of today, because today everything has been pushed into one single lump, as it were. And man is asked to face that. I wonder if that is so actual. Though we continue to live with my sacred threads and this and that, but somehow or the other that is very superficial. Basically, at the core of it, man is realizing that his life cannot be separated into regional cultures and regional cultures. Take for instance the entire movement of revival that has taken place in the Muslim countries. It's a hopelessly reactionary, anti-humanistic movement. Now you can see that in the name of culture, something totally anti-humanistic can also come into being, and we see the danger then of mere revival, because they are ignoring the fact that there is a fusion. We are living in a period of fusion.
Chuji, may I ask you something? Is culture an additive process? Or is it, does it contain both the additive and the transforming element? You can continue to add to culture. Therefore, when you talk of pre-generation culture, are you talking of it as an additive process? That is to add.
I mean, strata by strata by strata.
How that is?
You see,
I mean, how?
So I think that could. Is it, if I may ask, please, without interrupting your thinking, is it the crisis in consciousness, or environmental crisis. You understand what I mean, sir? Is it a moral, psychic crisis or crisis of various superficial cultures knocking at each other and the stronger wiping the other? Or is it various stratas of various cultures are being imposed on each other, and therefore there is no, I wouldn't use the word identity, there is no depth to it. So I'm asking, if I may, is the cultural crisis in the economic, political, religious, social, or is it at much greater depth, which is in the very consciousness of man himself, that I would like to ask?
Sir, in India we use a word which is sanskar.
Sir, if you don't mind, don't introduce Sanskrit words.
No, I am not. I am introducing that word only with the idea of bringing a new element which we have so far ignored. That is, that culture is not something that I voluntarily take or renounce, but culture is something that comes to me like my heritage in the form of genetic memory, in the form of a genetic memory, something like that.
Obviously, it's more than that.
Yes, it is more than.
I mean, genetic memory is possibly part of it, but culture must be what has been acquired and what has been and what is acquired, isn't it? It is in the what has been you can do nothing about, but in what is acquired you can do something.
And being transmitted also.
I think, if I may ask again, is it a crisis in the very nature and the consciousness of man, which is his brain, his emotions, his senses, his thoughts, which make up all the contents of consciousness? Is that in that is the crisis or external of it? That's what I would like to know.
I suppose the medicinal aspects of society, where the conflicts and degeneration is manifested, has something to do with the psychological structure in which this society is built. So, as you point out, sir, I think it is the crisis in the consciousness.
Are you saying, sir, the psyche itself is not affected, but rather influenced by the various pressures externally?
It is to one extent only, sir.
What, sir?
It is to one extent only that psyche is affected by what is taking place in society. And
Yes.
outside.
So there is the psyche, a permanent psyche. Are you saying? A volatile psyche.
How a psyche which is affected by society sir, can be permanent?
Yes. The psyche being affected by the society. Let's take to that. May we begin, sir? I don't know. I don't want to usurp the. I'm not the only dog barking. What do you say, sirs? The gentleman says that the psyche, if I may use the word, the essence of man, is affected by the society in which he lives, by the pressures of society, pressures of religion, pressures of economic situations, and so on, political and so on. So that essence is shaped by the society. Is that so? I'm not saying you're not right, sir. I'm just questioning it.
I wanted to say only this, sir, that it is true only partially. It is affected only to an extent. Only affected.
Then we'll have to ask, sir, if I may, who created this society in which we all live? Deplorable, ugly, cruel, brutal, aggressive, competitive, and so on. Who created this society? Right, sir? Please. Man has created it. Psyche has created it. Is the society different from the psyche?
I would view the psyche slightly differently. If we want regeneration, that means we want to change. Something must be willing to change or capable of being changed. We will not get anywhere by talking about permanent or close to permanent changes. We must talk in terms of things can be changed. Now, an individual will act based upon forces that affect his sense of happiness or whatever it is that is needed for his survival. Secondly, whatever he contributes to. So I think instead of sort of going and saying the problem is too deep rooted, we must assume that individuals haven't changed substantially over a period of time. But the reinforcements that are necessary for them to contribute and act in certain ways is lacking. So we must assume we can change it, and change will not be too difficult, I hope, because if it is too difficult, then we are asking for forces that cannot be regenerated or cannot be created.
So there have been changes. Historically, revolutions, every form of change is going on around us all the time. The Western culture imposing on the Eastern culture, and the Eastern culture subsiding, and the other is dominating. So when we say individuals can change, must change, shouldn't we ask, if I may suggest, is there an individual at all? We assume we are individuals. It may be one of our comfortable illusions. That is the common ground, whether it's in the East or in the West. We say we are all individuals. Individual enterprise, private enterprise, the whole business of it. So shouldn't we, if I may respectfully suggest or ask, if there is an individual at home, or are we the result of million years of human experience, which we have translated as the individual?
I think the millions of years cannot be blamed for it because
What's that?
the individuality that we have because of millions of years of existence cannot be blamed because this change has occurred.
I'm not blaming. I'm not blaming anything.
But the factor that if we have that is probably not what we commonly call as individuality.
No, I think again we have to define the word individual, which is always, again, not definite. The word individual means a human being who is not broken up, indivisible. That the origin of that word comes from that, not to be divided. If you take that, a common meaning of in the dictionary, good dictionary, not, then you'll find most human beings are not individuals at all. So if you could move away from that word and the feeling of that word, the content of that word, emotional, intellectual, tradition and all that. Are we individuals at all?
Not in the sense you described.
What's that?
Not in the sense in which you said that it is individual something without any division. We have division in us.
Therefore, you are not an individual.
I'm not saying that sense.
And so
In
I'm,
the ordinary sense, sir, as a self-enclosed centers of activity, in the sense we use in
Yes, sir. I know, sir, we use that word to convey a certain activity, a self-centered activity, an activity of becoming, which means there is a being from which you are becoming. Is there a being? No, but I don't know if you want to discuss in this way.
In that sense, the crisis is not peculiar to our times.
What?
In that sense, the crisis is not peculiar to our times.
That's what I'm questioning, sir.
It has been there all along.
All along, that's what I feel. Which we have evaded, which we have dodged, which we have escaped from.
This does not seem to
No, I know it doesn't.
conform to the factual reality of our material life. Because the problem of pollution, which threatens to wipe out the life of fish in Lake Baikal, did not
Cambodia,
exist
sir.
before.
Cambodia,
Laos,
everything. Don't I mean,
So
sir?
I feel that the peculiar nature of the degeneration in the midst of which we are called on to live, you can't just say that it is eternal.
I'm not using the word eternal.
No, you are not, sir, but when you say that you are questioning whether it is
Not
it has
only-
a time
Not
relevance.
only present time, has this crisis not existed before?
Is there something unprecedented?
What's that?
Is not there something unprecedented
Huh?
in the crisis? Unprecedented.
very special.
Unprecedented.
Yes, yes.
So
Maybe.
I think one of the major differences is that probably in this century there has been more destructive potential created
Atom
than,
bomb.
than probably in the
Yes, sir.
previous centuries
Yes, sir.
put together.
Yes, sir.
And because of the pace of telecommunications, the global village and all the rest of it, the human consciousness is now being bombarded with impact of a force of a
So
kind
that's
which has never happened before.
That's what I'm asking, sir. Are we concerned with the impacts, or are we concerned with the very consciousness of man, which needs, from Achuji's point of view, which needs transformation, which needs to be changed? So I don't know how are we attacking this problem?
So obviously it has to be the consciousness. I mean, there's no choice.
So, would you then go into this question whether it's possible for human beings to bring about a mutation in the very consciousness of itself? Please, sir, I mean, this is.
We need to say that by changing or by bringing about mutation in human psyche, the problem before us, that the problem of social degeneration and cultural degeneration, will be solved.
By changing oneself, do you say that the cultural degeneration will end?
Sir, that's why I asked her whether my consciousness, yours and others, is that an individual consciousness in the accepted sense of that word, or is it the consciousness of whole humanity? Because our brains, our minds have evolved through million years. So I do not see that I'm an individual. To me, that sounds so ridiculous, personally. I represent the rest of humanity.
Totally, sir, or only in parts?
What, sir?
Do I represent the total humanity, totally or only in parts? Suppose I change.
No.
So one of the difficulties, I think, if I may
Verbal.
say, is, well, verbal is one thing, sir. Another is the subtle difference between saying, I represent the totality of human consciousness, which is even verbally very easily graspable, if you know what I mean. The other thing is to say that I am the consciousness of the world, or I am the world, or the world is me, or whatever.
I've said that.
You've said that, sir, but there seems to me the first stage is very easily
Acceptable.
No, comprehensible.
Yes.
The second stage to you seems almost synonymous. To me, it certainly doesn't seem synonymous.
I don't quite follow
You
this.
see, I
So if you say, I represent the consciousness.
I understand. Forgive me. When I use the word represent, I am the humanity.
No, I think
No,
what
he's saying
Ram
something
Chandra was
different.
saying, sir, was that when you say that you are humanity, as a statement you say, sure, I am humanity.
I know.
But when it means
I am.
not only accepting it at the verbal level, but having a state of mind which is humanity.
Of
which
course,
sees
I mean
itself
that.
as humanity.
I mean that.
It's a different.
I will retract that word, represent, if you will. Forgive me.
Because I understood this A represents B, where A
No.
I'm sorry, sir, I did not follow at all what you were saying. You said that you are humanity. In what sense are you humanity? Do you mean yourself, or are you saying everyone should say that?
Each one of us.
Yes, but what about the meaning of the sentence?
What?
What is the meaning of this?
Sentence, you say you are humanity.
All right, sir. Every human being, whether he lives in different parts of the world, suffers.
But they suffer differently.
Huh?
But they suffer differently.
But it is suffering.
Yes.
That suffering may live in a small house or a big house.
True, but suffering from indigestion is different,
What, sir?
from suffering from hunger.
Yes, I'm saying hunger.
So you can't say everything suffering.
Sir, if you'll forgive me, may I explore a little bit and then we'll meet perhaps. Every human being suffers. The causes may vary, but the suffering is common. Right, sir? Whether it's economic suffering, social suffering, injustice, the act of feeling, the shedding of tears, the intense feeling of despair, that's common to all humanity, right? To all human beings, I won't even call it humanity, to all human beings. Right, sir?
But yes and no.
Huh?
Yes and no. Some people suffer, some don't.
What do you mean, some people?
Yes.
Who says no?
Who says?
Who says no?
To suffer. Is there anyone who doesn't suffer? Some
Yes,
people
but
suffer.
I'm saying the way of classifying all suffering under one omnibus doesn't help analysis.
No, I'm not trying to help here. Sir, we are investigating, not trying to help. That'll come much later.
We should investigate in a way where we can proceed.
What?
We should investigate in a way where we can proceed to analysis.
That's all.
So if you use one word to encompass everything,
No, I'm going into different words.
it doesn't produce clarity.
Doesn't produce?
Clarity. I mean, in my mind.
All right, try it, sir.
If I may say, if there is a death, for instance, it's a common experience all over man. The pain which death brings of someone very near to you is a factor which is common to man. There may vary if it is one's child or or it varies in terms of relationship, but the pain out of it, the fact of an ending like that, a total ending like that, is a common thing to all man.
You are giving examples of common sufferings. But hunger is not a common
No, we are
suffering.
not talking of hunger.
I am talking.
No. Yeah, we have
So
to-
kindly take that into your analysis. So,
No, of course.
death is
In an
common.
affluent country where there's no hunger, there's no pain of hunger,
yes, but even in India, some people don't feel hungry.
naturally.
So that's not common. It's not like
No,
death.
but death is a common factor.
Yeah, yes. You are giving one example.
Loneliness is a common factor.
Sure. Are we
There are
talking only of those kinds of sufferings?
We
Are
are
we
talking,
discussing
sir,
only death
for
and
just a minute, sir. First, let's be clear. There is physical suffering, hunger, disease, poverty, and so on.
Right.
That exists more or less in most of the countries, Russia included. Even in the affluent society of America, this exists. There are people, I don't have to go into all that exists in every part of the world, this physical suffering, physical hunger, physical deprivation, physical lack of housing. That's suffering at one level. There is suffering also at another level, which is psychological level. I lose my son. I want to fulfill, can't. There is suffering of not only my suffering, but the suffering of my wife, and so on, so on, so on. There is a psychological suffering, which is anxiety, jealousy, hatred, competition, and a sense of desperate loneliness. Right? This is common. And this desire to be rich is common. Right, sir? So, we are saying, basically, human beings have all these factors. Right, sir? Basically. Right? Therefore, I'm saying, we are this common factor is in all of us. Right? And from that I say, this common factor makes one think I am the rest of humanity. I am like the rest.
Why?
I may have brown hair or white skin or a black skin or Chinese skin, but this is the common denominator, common root of, not root, the common state of man. I'm only talking about me.
You are not interested in the uncommon sufferings like hunger.
Oh, that comes, of course, of course. There are various talents, and you are a poet, I'm an engineer, somebody is a painter, I'm a dirty politician, and so on, so on. That's merely, we won't go into that for the moment. If you agree to that. If not agree verbally, but actually, that we are all go through this business of existence which contains all this. Right, sir? That's all. Therefore, I say I'm not an individual at all. Basically, I may be better educated. I may have no food. My wife may run away from me. But the basic thing is that. Right? Would you?
How does it follow, sir, that you are not an individual because your sufferings are shared by, I don't know, with them?
No, sir.
How does it follow?
My pattern, I was born in an American or a Russian. The culture around me is either totalitarian or so-called free democratic, etc. But in a basic movement of the American and the Russian is the same. Right, sir? I mean, that's so obvious.
Yes, but it doesn't follow the
I'll show you in a minute, sir. I'll show you in a minute. So, what is an individual then? If the individual, according to dictionary meaning, means a human being indivisible. Right, sir?
That's one meaning, sir. but
No,
I don't think that.
give it any meaning you like, sir. This is the common meaning according to dictionary.
That's separate human being.
What?
Separate cells, if you want. to
Ah,
call it.
oh, now, if you say separate self, what is the separate self?
People with different experiences.
What?
People
People with different experiences.
All right, what are the experiences? Sexual, poverty, riches, right? Hunger, loneliness. We'll come back to that. The self is all this. There's nothing divine about it. Would you? Huh? So the self is the result of the movement of thought. No, sir? Thought has built the self. And the super self and the God and the higher, nobler, all the movement of thought. You may disagree, let's talk over it.
But if you take this as the base for the examination of the
Culture.
problem
Of culture.
of culture, then if the crisis is not in the culture of today, but in the mind of man.
That's consciousness.
Now, the mind of man, this being in pain, being in anguish, being in sorrow, this tremendous suffering man brings into him, into the world with him, and projects into his life and into the future,
I don't quite
is
follow.
the area in which transformation has to take place. If there is to be a change, therefore, there has not to be a change in the environment which is. I'm not saying that there hasn't to. There
I
has
don't
to
quite
be a
follow
change.
what you're saying, sir.
Sir, there has to be a change in the environment. You cannot live in this country and say
Right.
that there has not
Now,
to be a
how,
change.
how do we bring about this change?
Both in the environment and in.
You know, where does the as the communists, socialists, all the Maoists and all those people say, change the structure of society, right, sir? You know about it, right, sir? You seem doubtful.
Yes, sir. Yes and no. I don't think they are saying that you shouldn't change yourself also.
Yeah,
But they are saying that's not enough.
that's it. No, they emphasize that first and this second.
Yes.
Sir, let's be.
No, just as you are doing the reverse.
No, I'm not doing the reverse. Marxists and so I don't have. Say, change the environment, and then perhaps you'll change man.
No, I don't think it will be quite that correct reading of Marx.
Right, sir? Explain to us, sir.
So as I understand it, he's saying both. But he is saying that certain forms of exploitation have become structural. They have gone into society.
Yes,
And you have therefore to change.
change that. Which
That
means
may not
what?
be a very complex question which might change this world.
Which means what, sir? The structure has to be changed.
Yes, the relation product.
Yes, yes,
Yes.
so we all know that. So the structure has to be changed to bring about a good relationship between man.
Sure.
So which means what? Structure, then man.
No, it doesn't proceed like that, sir. I think
Proceed
that
your way you like, sir.
It could be simultaneous.
Does it ever happen? Does it ever happen?
Well, nothing has ever happened.
That's all.
I don't think you can guess.
No, it hasn't happened. By saying both are important,
No, in some places it might have happened.
might.
I have a question. Whether it's not a fact that according to Marxist reality, this society or this structure of society has to be changed first. I think fascists is on the external. Isn't it the fact? Isn't it so? How do you question?
No, sir.
No, I don't think it will be too simplistic to say that of Marx. I mean, we have time, one could produce readings and so on, but obviously this is not the place.
Sir, problem is this, sir, if I may put it, as Mr. Achuji pointed out, which is, what am I to do to change myself in relation to the society I live, in the culture in which I've been brought up? What am I as a human being to do? That is, I find I am degenerating, I am corrupt.
No, sir, somebody else is there.
Huh?
Somebody else is there.
Oh yes,
I mean, I'm being exploited. Now,
I am, of course.
Because somebody else is-
Of course.
But I am part of it. I am not
No,
separate from
there are
society.
innocent people who are exploited.
Oh yes, sir, I agree.
Then who is to blame?
If the innocent becomes the exploiter, given chance, the innocent also becomes the
No,
exploiter.
at that time and now, for me to be given chance. Sir, let me put a very complex question because I think we should help people to ask.
I don't know, sir, put it, I'm not to
There
the
is
only.
There is a politician exploiting me. There is a moneylender exploiting me. Capitalist exploiting me. Now, should I start changing myself or changing him?
The basic question is whether I am exploiting in any way or whether I
No, I am
am
not
exploiting.
exploiting, I am the exploited. Yes.
I'm not an exploiter
No,
anyway.
no. There are some people who are just exploited.
I don't come to
I think this will not help us to even considering there are people who are not exploiting at all. In the deeper sense of the word, I don't know whether what you are saying is because wherever there is self, there is some kind of exploitation. So at that level, we will never get at anything. So, even considering that there are people who are not from the exploitation.
No, I must concede that when I see exploitation in the world, I am not somebody standing out of that and saying I am the pure and society is impure. It is not like that. I am part of a social process, and the entire social process is in the throes of degeneration. So, I am part and parcel of a process of degeneration, and I am trying to understand this as a unity factor.
Sir, could you be a little concrete? When a Harijan chair is set fire to, there is an atrocity in a Harijan chair to a landlord. Now the concrete situation, are you saying the Harijans are also exploiters?
No, sir.
Now let's, you talk of degeneration. Degeneration is
I will
an
explain.
Kind of an incident.
No, I will explain what I say. 300 generations of my ancestors as Brahmins have created a social system in which society accepts the burning of the Harijan huts as a matter of course. So I can't say I don't share the guilt.
No, I'm talking as a Harijan. You are talking
No,
as
sir, maybe.
What is the attached to Harijan?
Yes, I am saying that whether you call yourself a Harijan or you call yourself, the moment you separate yourself from one sector as the pure, that I have not exploited anyone, everybody else is exploiting me. I think this is a very unscientific way of looking at modern society, because modern society as we see it consists of a process of exploitation, a process where the smaller fish eat the bigger fish.
Smaller fish is bigger fish.
The bigger fish eat the smaller fish, I beg your pardon. The bigger fish eat the smaller fish. And whether at one moment I happen to be the victim of exploitation, at another moment I happen to be the cause of exploitation, I must look at myself as a unity phenomena, because I cannot merely hope to cope with this problem by saying that, oh, I am the immaculate, exploited, I have not exploited anybody, now what shall I deal with society? I don't think we are any of us in that position. None of us sitting here and discussing today can claim to be in that position of being immaculately free of the processes of degeneration and exploitation. We are all parties to it because we live in a society which is unity, integrated. Now I am asking this question, that as we see this society today, we are part and parcel of it. It is not as though the society is divided between black sheep and white sheep. I wish it was so simple as that. It would be terribly simplistic to say that society consists of white sheep and black sheep, and now how are we to save the white sheep or the black sheep? I don't think we are discussing the problem of cultural crisis and degeneration at that simplistic level. We are saying this is a total phenomenon and we are part and parcel of it. How do we deal with it as individuals, accepting responsibility for what is happening, at the same time feeling that we are caught up in a machine which is beyond our comprehension and control, which is dragging us? Do I make any sense, sir?
Wouldn't you also say, Achyut, if I may say, wouldn't you also say, the fact is, I am not a Harijan, I am Pupul Jaika. The fact is, I am in the realm of the exploiters, not in the realm of the exploited. The fact is. And therefore, if I am dealing with the fact, I have to see what are the tendencies, what are the demands, what are the factors which is causing that which is outside, which I call outside. These are the urge for power, the urge for money, the urge to exploit. All these are tendencies within me. So, identifying those tendencies, seeing that they are the cause of the degeneration, is it not urgent for me to ask myself, can there be an ending of these tendencies within me? If they end within me, then possibly there can be an action which will be meaningful. Otherwise, my sitting here and talking of the Harijan or the talking of the exploited, I do some social work, or I do this, or I do that.
I want to go one step deeper than this. It is not a question of mere physical privation. When you take a Harijan Basti, you see a human being born as good as any of us, and yet he is totally, his whole manner of life is such, he will beat his wife, he will gamble, he is unawakened to the potential of his human significance. I feel that is a much greater tragedy than hunger. Hunger is nothing as compared to this. I can just feel a hungry man, I can give him a good meal and say, have a good meal. But I can't end the misery, because the misery consists in the man being alienated from the core of his human essence. I feel that
I'm not quite sure you're convinced the gentleman.
no, the modern crisis, when we talk of the modern crisis and cultural crisis, and when we bring in culture and the decay of the Indian culture, I think we are going into a depth where man is losing his integrity, his sense of being a human being. He is bartering away his heritage.
Actually,
May
gentlemen, you have a big word, sir.
I look at it this way, when there is an actual situation, say, in my village, Harijans, I may not be a Harijan, as I said, I belong to the other more fortunate section, but I am aware, say, of what is happening. I cannot think that by changing the structure, if the Harijans come to power, they will also do in future what the Brahmins have done. I mean, that kind of thinking can also become escapism, because then you will not do what should be done at that moment, because there are certain things which have to be done at that moment, and you cannot say history will repeat itself and so things will not change.
Do you agree with all this?
No, I don't.
Here we are. What is preventing our common meeting, sir?
No, first of all, I'm not sure whether we are discussing ourselves here or society.
I am the society. That was actually, you may say that's simplistic. That's, by using that word, you are cutting me off. But as Achuji pointed out, I don't differentiate myself from society. Society has built me.
No, sir, this I'm simply not able to say.
You're not,
There is such a thing as society apart from myself.
I am the society, I said.
No, that's an assertion, I don't. It's not an argument.
What, sir?
It sounds like an assertion. You keep saying I am society.
I mean, it's not, he went into it, sir. Please go.
No, he says society is unitive or something.
What, sir?
Unitive.
Unitive?
Unitive.
I don't understand.
That means that
I see it being very divided. How do you say it?
What is this? What did you say, sir?
I see society very divided. He says it is unitive. I don't understand.
He doesn't say society.
the process is unitive.
Process.
I think we have to.
He said quite a bit.
No, sir, I don't want to hold up your discussion.
Oh, I'm not.
Quite content to be an observer. Because all of you seem to be meeting somewhere.
So our concern is, sir, not whether we feel who is exploiting whom or whom has exploited and so on. All that is included in the question, can human consciousness be changed?
Sir, did you say your concern is not who is exploiting?
I am.
Unless you
Did I hear you right?
I said it's all included.
It's included.
Exploitation, cruelty, war, beating each other up, violence, the desire to be peaceful, all that is included in my consciousness, in human consciousness. Right, sir? So I am a Harijan. You exploit me. And as that gentleman pointed out, when I come on top, I'm going to exploit you, which is what's happening. So that's one part. I've been hungry, and perhaps one day society will change and feed me, or the whole business of it. All that is included in my consciousness. When I use the word consciousness, it's in all that's included. Would you agree to that, sir?
So are you saying it's only a matter of consciousness? Hunger is a matter of consciousness?
I don't think this is.
It's
You
a-
see, you.
No, please don't get impatient.
No,
Ah,
I just
no,
want
I'm not going to
Don't
buy.
get sounds of choo-choo-choo.
No,
No,
I
sir.
thought if I may explain one little thing.
If you are going to have a discussion,
No, I thought I would explain one
Let's
thing.
follow.
We are, it is as if you're putting action as separate from
Consciousness.
consciousness. If you divide action from consciousness, then you can say, well, you're just dabbling, going around in this, and the man starves outside.
no, Mr. Shankar, I am not dividing consciousness from action. But I am saying consciousness should lead to action.
Of course, sir, that is
Consciousness,
important.
that's
It cannot be a consciousness that
naturally.
That's, sir.
That's why I thought.
I,
It cannot be just change of consciousness.
sir, please, have some patience, sir.
No, I thought it was others who were.
Yes, sir, yes, sir. What is a human being to do faced with all of this, right? Exploitation, competition, the whole lot of it. What am I to do?
Sir, I am not interested in this very large question. Now, I just want to pose one concrete question which nobody answers.
Which is that?
There is in actuality, an act of exploitation.
Act of?
Exploitation.
Yes, sir.
The cherry is getting burned.
Yes, sir.
What should you do?
What to do? Don't exploit.
No, I am not exploiting. My cherry is getting burned.
Yes, but
I mean,
don't be
she said she is a
exploited.
Brahmin, I'm talking
Don't be exploited.
I mean, how do you not...
Fight it.
Huh?
Fight it.
Very good.
Wait.
That's all that I want.
No. I know the word. You're catching on to the word and beating me with that word. I said, you stand up, strikes are going on in Europe. You do all those things. I've just come from England, therefore. Trade union, form them, do all those things. But will that stop exploitation? Right, sir? I used to belong to ILP, which is Independent Labour Party, when I was a young boy. And they are the bosses. So I'm asking you, consciousness implies not only action, but the correct action. What is a human being to do surrounded by all this? Which doesn't mean he withdraws into some mountain or some theoretical principles and all the rest of it. He's involved in action. If you admit that, then we can proceed. Shall we?
I feel reassured, sir, with this answer.
What?
I feel a little reassured by what you have just now said.
Why? I know you. Why should I reassure you?
No, if you say that at least one should fight.
No, sir, that is logical, sir.
Correct.
My consciousness is inaction, action, love, hate. Right? And we are asking, in what manner is this consciousness which exploits and is exploited, which is sorrowful, which is ugly, which is brutal, you follow? All that. How is that to be changed? That's all.
Sir, my problem is unfortunately ignored. Because when you take the instance of one cherry being burnt here and asking what is my reaction to this?
I quite agree.
What I am saying is that you are narrowing down the entire scope of the problem and simplifying it to your own convenient little dimensions, that if I can save that cherry from being burnt and all those people being rehabilitated, then I shall feel holy and I shall not feel guilty. I think the problem is not like that. The world does not permit you any such consolations, because I have before me Kampuchea. And right in front of me, 10 million people are being butchered. More people are being killed in Kampuchea than were killed in Vietnam. Now what I am saying is same thing in Russia, same thing in America. I am suggesting that we have to look at the problem of man as he is today, not only in a very simple way of how I can live a very orderly life in a very disorderly world, in a very chaotic, crumbling world, in a totally disintegrating world. How can I live like a holy man? That is not my problem. That would be an oversimplification. I am saying that that sort of thing does not satisfy me anymore. I am not satisfied with being a holy man away from the world and doing a little good somewhere and washing the bottoms of poor people and untouchable in some leper village. I feel that I cannot give any solace to myself by this kind of personal solutions to a problem which has vast dimensions, in which is involved the sorrow of man. And I feel that I am personally identified with that sorrow of man. The sorrow of man is that he has a certain human potential and the environment is quite favorable, and at the same time there is some crookedness somewhere, something has gone wrong, and this whole civilization is disintegrating, so that I am unable to get what potential I have in me as a human being. This is not I, but I mean this is the soul with the whole human race. And we are looking at it sectionally. Naturally in India we look at it as an Indian problem, and I say India is passing through a crisis. I suppose they will be saying the same thing in some other country also in their own terms.
Saying the same thing all over the world.
So I thought we were discussing this subject.
What then is the correct action?
No,
you may postpone action.
No.
In search of very correct action.
No, I am not
That's the fear.
postponing. I am saying that the consideration of the widest dimensions of this problem is an aid to personal action, to effective personal action. It is not as though I am running away from personal action, but I am demanding from my personal action an effectiveness, a voltage of effectiveness, which I will lack unless I get an understanding of the global dimensions of this process of degeneration. There is a process of degeneration. I see it. And I am asking myself, can man survive in this? So, Krishnaji has raised a problem. Would you like to deal with this in terms of consciousness? Or would you deal with it as a environmental phenomena which has to be dealt with through adjustments in environment, etc.? I don't know if I understood you right. No, you raised this question. Am I understanding you right?
Right.
May I say I am a biologist by training, and my observations may be slightly biased in that direction. It turns out that in natural evolution, there have been very few instances of social organizations having been set up by any animal species. And man is a prime example of this. But in other animal kingdoms, there are very few instances of social behavior in quotes cultures. Insects have a few social societies.
That's right.
Ants, bees, and termites.
Quite right, sir.
And a few primates may be considered to have elementary social structure. I was struck by this morning's conversation in the fact that it related mainly to a view of the world from an ethnocentric point of view, in which man is the center of its concerns, and where to be cruel or unjust to other man is an important consideration, but more importantly, the injustice to nature and injustice to the total globe on which we are all living today. A very important vantage point which helps me personally to look at this question is to make a mind experiment and travel maybe a few million miles outside Earth, or to look down on this Earth, and problems like what we are discussing seem important, but at the same time seem kind of relevant in terms of a universal concern of how life originated on this Earth and what is really happening to it. It turns out that, just to get some numbers straight, the age of the Earth is about 4.5 billion years old. Life probably originated on Earth about 3 billion years ago. Human evolution, as we understand it, is about 2 million years old, which is about 1,000 generations. And only in the last 100 generations, which is about 2,000 years ago, did actually one generation was able to communicate to the next generation by the invention of language. And I think that the real problem that often one sees in biology is the accelerating pace of change. Accelerating at a rate which I think is difficult for any organism to adapt to in a finite lifetime. And our ability as a society to accept the rate of change as an accelerating one is of very great importance, I think. The real problem is, I think, of not being aware of the fact that we live on this earth, and that not only are we common to each other and we are humanity, as Professor Krishnamurti said, but we are really part of nature.
Yes, sir.
And that it is of great significance to find something like a genetic code in which the tree and I have the same rules of existence. The rules of genetic code for both these organisms, which function in very different ways, are identical. And the more one realizes this maybe condensed position of us on this earth, maybe with the idea that other life forms have also equal relevance. When you're talking of the environment, I personally feel it's not only the environment of our social structure, but actually the total quality of life, the way we deal with other things and other people in a very off-handish and high-handed way that often creates problems. And I think it's partly because we do not understand the rate of change. I think that from examples of social behavior in insects, altruism, which is one of the, I think, questions which was being raised in a kind of indirect way. Altruistic behavior is known in other societies, but it exists in very, very special conditions, where altruism actually benefits the whole social order. Then it functions, but if it doesn't, it actually is selected against by natural selection, and altruistic behavior disappears, selfishness pervades, and actually the beehive is destroyed. And I think that the basic mechanisms to understand this problem for me have been to try to study living systems other than man. I'm not a human biologist, but trying to understand something outside of me, so maybe I can get some insights into how I work or how other people work.
Agree, sir?
Giving some information.
I mean, that is so. I say there's nothing to argue. So would you say we are part of nature? We are part of the whole human system is, we are condensed, we have brought all this into a center called this, me. Right? And but that me has separated itself. It doesn't accept the whole. Am I making myself clear?
Yes.
And this center, which is with all its self-centered activities, it's thinking itself it's separate and fighting the rest. And I'm sure this doesn't happen, I'm asking you, sir, in the animal kingdom. They join together, they fight a common enemy, but they don't fight among themselves, which is what we are doing.
Sometimes they do so.
Huh?
The animals.
Of course, I know.
I was just wondering whether it wouldn't be, I mean, I pose it as a question rather than an information, to think of some of these problems in a less ethnocentric way.
Less
Ethnocentric way.
ethnocentric way.
No, but if you're
Would you mean by ethnocentric man-centered?
Yes.
Race.
Usually we mean by ethnocentric thinking as Indian or thinking as American.
Oh, yes.
You know, the word ethnocentric as we use it, that when a Russian looks at the world as though Russia was the center of the world,
Yes.
that is ethnocentric. When Indian thinks that Indian culture is the core of the world culture, that is ethnocentric.
Because I personally do believe that there is reasonable evidence that we are on a closed system floating in the universe, maybe with other civilizations in other planets, and that unless we get it straight while we are here, what we are doing, that we are not alone, we don't have some kind of a special dispensation to do as we will with this world, including our own fellow human beings, I think we are sunk, as you rightly say. And I think this question of the rate of change, I don't think can be understood only in terms of our own interactions with ourselves. I think it has to be understood in terms of nature.
But surely some awareness of that has already been created in terms of the rate of change of exploitation of what they call non-renewable resources, and how it's been exponential in the last 50 years, that sort of thing. What further would you say, other than letting a lot of more people know the same facts?
I'll tell you something. I personally have been most impressed by the American Indians. They've been occupying that continent for thousands and thousands of years, when Greece and Rome and India and all were exploding as cultures. And when the white man found the American continent, he found it in very good shape.
Marvelous state.
It hadn't been destroyed ecologically. It hadn't been exploited. Nothing terrible had happened. Whereas all man-centered cultures, such as ours and Buddhism and Christianity, have actually seen man at the top of a pinnacle and then actually gone ahead and played havoc with nature. And I think that the first photograph of the earth taken from moon by whoever it was resulted, I think, in the beginning of the ecological movement. Suddenly you saw yourself floating on this blue planet with clouds on it, and it was the beginning of the realization that we have to make sure that we don't mess it up.
But sir, our gentleman would say, how will you feed the hydrogen?
I think that it is this very question, this realization of understanding a very complex set of questions, and even to understand the whole concept of why something like the Harijan concept even arises in a society. I think probably that is not even understood very clearly. At least I don't understand it. And I think it's a terrible shame that
is it not necessary, this might be so, but in order to get face to face with that factor which makes the Harijan possible, is it not necessary to come face to face with that within myself, who wants to have the power to be at the top and put the person down below? It's that factor of divisibleness, of wanting someone to be below. And is it not necessary to come face to face with that?
Well, there was a very interesting television program in which I think it's something to do with the will to power. And there was a program on Eskimos that I once saw on television, in which Eskimos in this area of Alaska do not live in villages but live separately, and their main occupation is hunting. And the very interesting thing about it was that a certain actually the way the thing functions is that people, whenever they have a hunt, all the different Eskimo families work together. And hunt. And there is no winner or loser in this situation. The Americans, they have a new gadget called a skidoo, which is a ski-operated motorcycle, so that you can go over long distances with snow. The manufacturers arranged races of the skidoo. And it was the most interesting program that for the first time in Eskimo culture, the idea of a winner and a loser was introduced. And the will to power, and somebody was better than another one, and so on and so forth.
No, but this factor exists in man's mind.
Yes.
You have to take things as they are. This factor exists in man's mind. Without some deep change in that factor, do you think any new movement is possible? Any new perception is possible?
But I was going to say, Pupulben, that if we think of beating a horse, and we think we are more powerful than the horse, and I think we are doomed to treat the Harijan also in this way. In other words, if we treat nature that way, no wonder we treat our
I think
own
one of the
people.
points which he has raised is man-centered culture is responsible for this degeneration. What does it mean that self-centered, man-centered means completely self-oriented?
We call it
Ethnocentric and man-centered culture. I think there is a lot of meaning in it.
Sir, I see all this, sir. I've seen that film you have shown, and the commentator and all the rest of it. My question is, how is this human being to bring about a radical change, not only in himself, but outside? Right? That is where we are trying to discuss. What is a human being who is fairly cultured, fairly informed, and fairly intelligent? He's asking this question. He knows all this. The Harijans, the Eskimos, we're all fairly well educated. They all see this. And the flow of events are so fast, is being carried away. But he never stops and says, how am I, not as an individual, as a human being, to do something about all this? That's
The way I
what
feel about it is that I personally say to myself, I do not understand, and I want to understand nature.
Yes, sir.
That's
But
the only
I'm
thing I
part
do.
of that.
I do not understand.
Therefore, I have to understand myself.
Yes, that's
Right, sir? That's all we are saying. And in the understanding of myself, there might be a possibility that I transform myself. That I don't enter into this murderous game.
Is it conceivable that if I spend a lot of time trying to understand a tree, I may have so little time to beat the Harijans?
You will get
Is it possible?
No, that involves a question of time. Whether time is the factor of change. You know, sort of, or is there something else which doesn't involve time? We have accepted time as a means of change. If you question that there is no tomorrow, psychology, then I am faced with an immediacy. What's that?
Say something, sir.
Huh?
May I say something?
Yes, sir. I don't ask me, we're all part of that.
The problem is this. There is dictatorship in the country. And I fight it. And I know that when my people come to power, they may not do anything better. But still, can I stop fighting dictatorship? Can I stop fighting exploitation? You talked about right action. Sometimes we do not know what right action is, but we are moved to act. Like, going on a strike. Maybe I have to go on a strike if I am exploited. I know that strikes may not solve this problem, but still there is no alternative to me at that moment from going on strike. What do we do then? This is what I
Yes, sir,
wanted
that's what
to
I-
discuss here. We cannot wait for the permanent change of consciousness. Sometimes you have to act.
Of course.
If I am the exploited person, I have to act. Say tomorrow there is emergency in the country, I have to do something. Even to preserve my self-respect, my sense of
So
what is right.
As he pointed out, so do I take the whole of, the whole, or take the part and say that must be solved first? You understand, sir?
Yes. Strike, for instance.
Yeah, but sir, is there a way out of that? Sometimes we are forced to see only the part.
All right, sir,
and that's what we have been doing, and there doesn't seem to be an alternative in terms of action. By action, I mean not only changing myself, but changing the structurally.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I may have to ban the use of certain things to preserve the atmosphere, for instance. So legal changes are also necessary. Structural changes are also necessary. So they have to go hand in hand. But we are always limited in doing this, and there doesn't seem to be the right kind of action which will bring about a a more lasting change.
Says, can we discuss that even?
Yes.
What is right action? Can we discuss that?
Yeah, we should discuss.
And I don't know if
Yes, I think that's.
It's 11, shall we?
should we.
It's very interesting, Krishnaji. There seems to be time for everything,
Yes.
except the time to
Understand.
find a way of looking which is inclusive.
Also, your field of action may be in the area in which you live, but the way we function will not be fragmented. The quality of mind which functions.
So, what is action? So, I just want to, I'm not quibbling over words, please. What is action?
It is striking action.
I see grown-up man beating a ball, right? I see, all the rest of it. What is action? Is action, may I little explain, if you agree or it doesn't matter. Action means doing, not having done or will do. Having done means remembering, all the rest of it, and that remembrance is acting, right? I don't know if I'm...
Yes, I understand. Getting it.
Now, I am acting on remembrance. Right, sir? Is that action? Or I have had great many experiences and that has left a great amount of knowledge, and from that knowledge I act. Right? I'm a Harijan, exploited, all that, remembered all that, and from that I act. I hate anybody who is not this. So my action is either based on my remembrance of past things or on an ideal which I have conceived. A belief, a concept, a conclusion, all that. The concept, the structure, all that is based on the past. My action then is caught between the past and the future. Right? So, I am not acting. I don't have... My prejudices are acting. My conclusions are acting. My beliefs are acting. And therefore there is division. You believe in communism, I don't. Or I believe in something other and you don't. So is there an action which is, again, difficult word, forgive me, which is common to us? Not Harijan, Brahmin, an American Englishman, Eskimo, etc., etc., etc. Is there a common action which is right?
Since we are already fighting for our self-interests in our different groups, which is a fact that Americans exploit the underdeveloped countries and the richer people exploit the poorer people. It's a fact. It is
We're all
there.
exploiting each other.
Now, is it possible at all to find a common
Yes, sir.
among these people who are already fighting?
Yes.
They are divided.
No, they won't even listen to you.
Yes. Doesn't it make us feel, if you are in that kind of action, doesn't it make us feel desperate? It's impossible
So I've
to
talked to...
find a common platform.
Yes, sir, I've talked to many Americans. Talk. No. We haven't time. That's what they say. Go and tell somebody else. They won't even listen to you. And here we're trying to listen to each other, therefore understand each other. And therefore I'm saying, what is action in all this? You base your action on Marx. I base it on Shiva. And somebody else so. So can we be free of my marks, you of your, and he of his, and meet together. Find out what action is. Which doesn't mean we're going to take months, years, and in the meantime, no action. Is there an action which is not based on time? Right, sir?
But in that respect, would you say that action could stem from two basic needs? One is, one could say, I know that this, I am a communist or I am
Yes, sir.
a capitalist, and therefore, since I know, I will act this way. The other may be that to say that I do not know.
That's
Therefore, I find out. It's much better, it seems to me, to start with that.
That's right, sir. That's all I'm saying. Can I drop being a communist? You follow, sir? When I have been trained for years and years and years to be a communist, I won't drop it.
Apart from, does it seem to you that apart from the fact that that may be one way of doing it, that because the rate of change is accelerating, it's a safer bet to say that I do not know than to say I
Yes,
know?
sir. I wish I could start from that's all. But nobody takes that stand, sir.
I think we'll start with this in the afternoon. Yes, please.
Sir, which means my action is based on time, right? Our action. Time being memories and future, past. Is there an action which is not? I don't know if I'm.
Yes,
Which means an action of immediacy. Should we stop?
Yes, we'll meet at 4 o'clock.
Should we meet at 4 o'clock, sir?